Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this afternoon's County Council Transport and Environment Committee. And welcome back to our newly air-conditioned, when I say air-conditioned, I mean just the windows being opened. So let's hope that continues to work and gives us a bit of air. Nice to see the warm weather, but it's probably a little bit too warm maybe for sitting in a council chamber. So let's keep it as focused as we can. So item 1, minutes of the last meeting held on the 15th of June. May I sign those as a true and correct record? Do I have a proposer?
Yeah, second that, Chairman. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Ogle. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 2, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Barney on medical grounds, and Councillor Lawton is substituting. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Councillor Lawton. Item 3, declarations of interest by members and officers. Firstly, are there any disclosable pecuniary interests? I'll take that as none. And are there any private interests, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? I'll take that as none as well. So moving straight on to the substantive items then, item 4, which is the corporate environment strategy and the climate emergency. You will recall that this comes to us as a result of a motion at full council, which has now resulted in this being brought to this committee. So without further ado, I'll ask Mr. Allen, please. Would you like to present the report?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mick Allen. I'm Group Manager for Place Commissioning. For those that don't know me, obviously I recognise a number of new faces around the room. The report that's in front of you today is around the corporate environment strategy. What we're trying to do is to ensure that the Council's ambitions are aligned with the recent declaration on the climate emergency, consider an assessment of the carbon impacts of the authority's operations, so greenhouse gas report, and consider forwarding through to the EDAM committee for a consideration of moving the County Council onto a green energy tariff. I've got a brief presentation, Chairman, if that's okay to go with this.
Fine, absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'll just share the screen. Okay, let's just blow this up. There we go. Excellent. There's a little bit of background here as well, just for members who may or may not be quite aware of where we are with regard to the climate emergency and the situation nationally and globally. The first couple of slides just scene setting. I think this was one that hit home to me quite a while ago. You know, what if we're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons? We're actually, if we're trying to save the planet in order to deal with climate change, actually there's a lot of other benefits that we could be achieving through doing the right thing as well. Particularly around energy independence, the authority, the country is to some degree at the mercy of Europe in a number of ways around energy. Obviously, we're all aware of what's happened over the last week in Germany and the situation there with the flash flooding. Some of that mirrored to a lesser extent in London as well over the last week. And clearly the impacts of climate change are now impacting on everybody's lives, and we've had that in Nottinghamshire as well. A lot of the experts have been saying this for a long time. I'm not going to read through those, but obviously there's issues there, particularly the bottom one, which was back in 2012, the Committee on Climate Change said that there was significant risk that local authorities wouldn't develop and implement their plans quickly enough because they were constrained by money. And I think, 9 years on, that still applies to us, and post-COVID is likely to apply even more potentially. And I'll whip through this one very quickly because some people divides opinion, Greta Thunberg, but actually we're not doing this for ourselves. We're not going to change our impacts on the planet overnight. This is for the long term. Decisions we make today are going to impact into 2050, 2030, hopefully, but certainly longer term. And that's what we're here for. We're about building a legacy and improving the planet for everyone. I think one of the things that's really important, and particularly in this context of our climate emergency here in Nottinghamshire, is the scale of our influence. This sphere of influence is something that's come out again of the Climate Change Committee, and our emissions within the county council, things that we directly control, could be between 1% and maybe 5% of the emissions in the county. But our sphere of influence in terms of policy making, being a civic leader, working with our partners, looking at our procurement, looking at our wider impacts and operations could be much wider. So although we're very much focused on what we're doing here as a county council today, we've got to bear that in mind in terms of the wider context of what we're trying to achieve. There's a lot of stuff out there at the moment. Obviously, the Climate Change Act is what drives us, and the government have sort of committed to that now in law, which is good, and declared a climate emergency nationally. There are various things out there, resource and waste strategy that's out and going to change the way waste operations work fundamentally going forward, the environment plan, all those things. And actually, a number of you may have seen the Midlands Engine 10-point plan for green growth over the last month or so. We've been actively involved as an organisation in aligning that with our key priorities, and I think that's a fantastic way of linking up some of the actions nationally with what could happen across the whole Midlands region. So this again just repeats the fact that we have now declared a climate emergency in Nottinghamshire. That aligns with most of the upper tier and lower tier now local authorities across the East Midlands and across much of the UK. So we're in a good place to do that. What we have here at the county level is an environment policy that was approved 18 months or so ago now, and a draft environment strategy. And that environment strategy has got 59 points, action points, which are repeated in Appendix A of the report, but they're linked to 5 key themes. And those key themes were designed and developed around the priorities for the county council and what we could do and what we needed to do in order to impact positively on the environment. So natural environment, built environment, resources, travel and transport, and then the community leadership side of things. And that speaks to that wider sphere of influence type stuff as well. The first few are very much around what we can do, but it's around what we can do working with our partners and with establishing appropriate and robust policies to make a big impact across the county and obviously nationally and globally. It's important that we say that actually we haven't been stood still as a council for the last 10, 15 years. We have actually been making some significant changes and improvements. So the hybrid working model that's come about as a result of COVID in a lot of ways is going to be embedded, and that's made a significant change to the way we work and the number of miles that officers do and that members do and the amount of travel that impacts on our road networks, which is all positive. Colleagues in fire and highways have invested massively in street lighting, LED street lighting, made a significant impact on our emissions from within the estate, as have the things around rationalisation to some degree of our buildings, but also improvements in our buildings. And we've got 50 or so buildings fitted with photovoltaic panels, which feed electricity into those buildings, is used within the buildings, but also then exports to grid when it's appropriate and when it's viable, like today. I suppose the other thing I'd say is around waste to landfill as well. Waste to landfill is down now below 5%, which is very good, puts in the top 5%, 5 or so authorities nationwide in terms of that performance. Again, other things we can do, facilities, and there was a commitment, I think, at the full council meeting as well about single-use plastics and not only an improved ultimately it should hope and minimise the risk of accidents. So it's linking back into the reasons for doing it isn't just to save energy, isn't just to save carbon, it's because it's a better solution altogether. And one for Councillor Guilfoyle, because he's bound to be able to tell me all about this, but yeah, in effect, Worksop Library is a really good example of an efficient building that we have. It was always built relatively efficiently, and I appreciate when it's not underwater, but that's a different discussion for a different day, I think. But it's got biomass boilers, so it's got a renewable energy source into the heating. It's got solar water heating on the roof. It's now got solar voltaic panels on the roof as well, and rainwater harvesting. And that's a multi-user site that allows us to be very efficient. So just a few pictures really. They're the solar panels and the inverter that feeds back into the grid when they're not being just totally being used for the parasitic load. Biomass boilers were built into the site from day one, and we get renewable heat incentive there because the site doesn't have a backup gas boiler. In order to benefit from some of the tariffs and the benefits we get, as soon as you start sticking a gas boiler in it, the government don't give you those because it allows people to use the easy alternative. So it's a bit of a carrot and stick in that building, and that's the way some of the policies have gone over a long period of time. But within my area of the service and within the county council, we've got a lot of people who've been doing these things, been doing investments in buildings, they've been writing carbon management plans, doing all that. So already we've got the ability to provide training. I think what I would say, one of the key things to take out of today is that carbon literacy training for members is on offer through our involvement in the Local Authority Energy Partnership. That also for senior officers, and I think it's really important that people do that just so they understand the impacts of their day-to-day actions, but also their role as civic leaders and as politicians in making these things happen. We do have a number of funding sources already. We work extensively with Salix, who are part of the Carbon Trust financing various projects. We've got a revolving interest-free loan scheme there that spends the biggest part of £1 million a year. We've also funded, obviously, the large part of the LED lighting investment. I think £11 million has come from Salix as part of that investment. And we've got the Green Investment Fund that was approved last year by Policy Committee as part of the wider aspirations around the environment strategy. There's a lot of expertise both within our areas, clearly in highways, with our planning colleagues, and certainly across at ARC and VIA, who can help you with things. If you've got an idea, if you've got a plan, if you've got something that you think would be workable, talk to us, and we're able to take that forward and look at whether there's funding sources for it, whether it's technically viable, whether it provides a much better solution for us. And there's certainly a lot of enthusiasm, both from politicians and from officers, renewed enthusiasm, I think it's fair to say, following the climate emergency declaration. We've got a few things we could do relatively simply, because it's all in the context of a long-term aspiration to get to net zero by 2030. Obviously, there are different ways we can do things, both across our environmental work, across our green estates and other areas. We could look at fleet electrification. We're already greening our buildings, but we could try and push some of that. We are constrained again by the quality and state of our estate in some ways, but obviously in terms of those longer term investments, we can do that. Obviously, LTP is always an opportunity of integrated transport measures, trying to minimise the impacts of car use on the highway network. It comes with many benefits: air quality, reduced emissions, better travel times, all the things that go together as a synergy to work effectively. Obviously, we're already working to reduce plastics across our estate and across our operations. I think there's other ways of embedding sustainability into the supply chain. Some of that is already being done. We have a green strand within our procurement strategy at a corporate level, but I think there's potentially ways of strengthening that. So what there are here, and hopefully this is really just a seed set, but I think we want to ask some questions of the group today, because we want to know, well, are those 5 themes that we set early doors still correct? Are they what we want to do now? Are the 59 actions that were priorities still priorities? Do we want to do more? Do we do things differently? How can we manage that within the resources? Because a lot of green projects, green works are more costly up front with long-term potential financial and environmental benefits. And how can we support that community action? How particularly can we deal with that sphere of influence? We want to get beyond that 1 and 5%. We'll deal with that because that's our job. It's in our control. But we need to have that wider impact across there. And how can we lead that? We haven't necessarily been a lead at the county level on environmental stuff in the past, on climate change for any number of reasons. And I'm certainly not going to bore you with some of those today, but yeah, there are opportunities here to do that and to lead more effectively. I'll go back to those in a second. I just stuck one last slide in because I think it was useful. Just this was the UK energy generation today at 12:20 while I was sat eating my imaginary lunch. But as you can see, actually, yeah, no, it was. Yeah, I've had more than enough lunches over the last 18 months, as most people probably can tell who knew me before. But yeah, if you look at the sort of UK energy generation over at lunchtime today, big chunk of solar. Sorry, I'm trying to steer this with one hand, look at the screen with the other. Big chunk of solar today. It's a lovely day. Not quite as lovely as it was yesterday, but it's still a lovely day. Big chunk of solar, very little wind, but still the fossil fuels make up the majority of our power generation in the UK, supplemented significantly by nuclear. So we just need to be aware that in the context of greening the UK, it's very much about where the electricity comes from, but also how the network handles that. Because again, renewables tend to be very peaky and trophy, and there is another diagram, but I'll not bore you with that one. But again, obviously, when the sun shines, we get lots of solar energy. When the wind blows, we get lots of wind energy. But gas and the other fossil fuels are consistent, and nuclear is a very consistent supply. So I think it's really important to understand that in terms of our wider aspirations to try and mitigate that. So that's me. I'm just going to go back to that previous slide so I can leave it up there because I think that would be useful for you to have that there while you're discussing the report.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Allen. And so I will propose the recommendations, the 4 recommendations, 1, 2, 3 and 4 on pages 5 and 6 of the report. Just make a couple of comments. And you mentioned Germany. I was going to mention this in relation to a later item, but as you mentioned it, it's just amazing the devastating pictures that we saw on television in the last couple of days. And I'm sure that we all send our sympathy and condolences to both those affected and those families who unfortunately lost loved ones. Absolute devastation for all those communities, and made all the more devastating. It was only a few hundred miles from where we're sitting. We had a high pressure weather over here where we're all basking in this wonderful weather, and only a few hundred miles away there's that devastation occurring. So it just shows it regrettably can happen pretty much anywhere. Just moving on, you talked about the enthusiasm by both members and officers, and I'm sure as a result of us moving that motion at full council, the will is there from everybody, and now we need to put that will into action. So I think that's the main point we have to achieve. And just mentioning quickly flood resilience, you talked about working with partners. And one of the things I want to do is to, I don't have any criticism at all of us as the lead authority. The only criticism I have is that the law says we haven't got enough teeth to deal adequately with trying to prevent and deal with flooding. So I very much hope that we can actually try and find a way of adding extra teeth to the excellent work that we are already doing on the flood resilience and flood prevention score. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yes, formally second, Chair. Thank you very much. And yeah, I just want to thank you, Mick, for that presentation. I thought it was really informative. A couple of things just off the bat to sort of pick up on, particularly the carbon literacy training, which I think is a fantastic idea. I've been approached by a couple of members around understanding better how carbon affects them, the actual issues around climate change and what that means, because I think there's definitely a case that unless you're have been really into it, which I am one of those people, then you may not have spent the time maybe researching it and give it a full understanding. So I think that would be really useful. And I'd be interested to look at what the format of that is, and maybe if we can drop in a few things specifically around energy generation, which also touched on your other slide, because again, as you rightly pointed out, the renewable energy mix is a difficult one. Now that will be improving with the North Sea connection coming online with Norway, which will give us that additional connection to renewable power. And when the wind blows in the UK, you know, at speed, we can then send that over to our friends in Norway. And when they are overusing their hydropower and we're not getting so much wind, they can send that back over to us. So that, you know, that is improving. But specifically recently as well, with the discussions around the new STEP power plants, the nuclear fission, and the opportunity for generation and the incredible volume of gigawatts that creates in comparison to the renewable sources, the older renewable source, because of course nuclear fission is renewable. You know, again, it's a world of opportunity at the moment. It's an incredibly exciting time, actually. Things have really shifted in the past few years, and I think that's reflected in the enthusiasm that we have overall as a council to move things on. So thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I just a few points on this. I mean, as a committee, I mean, what a position we are in to be all coming together to you know, probably fight one of the biggest challenges that this county's ever faced. You know, I mean, I think it's a privilege to be here, that all of us get an opportunity to shape that policy. And again, I would, you know, encourage all members to come forward with ideas about their areas and the things that they want to see improved, and the direction that they want to see things moving, because, you know, it's all of our business and all of our problem, and, you know, we all need to get on and sort it. I think the ramping up side of it from the county council has been a fantastic thing. It's reflective throughout the officer team. I've had obviously conversations with yourself, Derek, and obviously with Mick as well, and Gary, and you know, and anybody that listened to me, basically. So I don't know whether to apologise or not. I'm not sure at this stage. But again, you know, that enthusiasm is throughout, and that's not just in the terms of maybe what we'd call the typical environment discussion around sort of what can we do to generate our own power, but it's more in about, you know, what we look at, what we smell, what we see. What we see, what we view when we're walking around our areas, and I'm sort of talking about a number of things. You know, we see less pollution, we're breathing in less pollution, and at the same time we're seeing greener streets, we're seeing less traffic, we're seeing lower carbon, you know, traffic in neighbourhoods, you know, all these sorts of things that come together to improve our overall environment, and not just purely in, if you like, the traditional terms that the media attempt to show us. There's a lot more to this than meets the eye, and it of course improves our quality of life as well. There's a lot of evidence around that says that green streets can reduce violent crime in areas that traditionally have high crime rates. The improvement of an area, the feeling of being in an environment. We've all experienced it during recently with lockdown, how we've been walking around the parks, and you know, and we've all felt that sort of openness in our lives that maybe we've not had before. And I think just moving on to the recommendations before I get too carried away, I mentioned it in my previous speech during the full council around the plastic bag guy. You know, let's not jump in both feet and come up with and suddenly throw lots of plans into place before we've had a chance to actually assess where we are. You know, there's been some fantastic work done by the county council already. A small thing as well, the LED lights, obviously one of the great things about them is they bounce the light down to the ground, so that improves wildlife navigation also, which is another massive positive, and maybe again, you know, one of those things that you know, we should be shouting I think a lot more about, because it's a big deal, that. But yeah, and so going back to my plastic bag guy, let's not jump in too fast, and that's why one of the key things that when I first met with officers was to discuss around us getting this assessment of where we are right now. What's our current carbon output? Where's it coming from? What parts of our business are causing this carbon output? Is it all around cars? Is it all around buildings? But without knowing that, we've got no way of understanding where we are and how to go forward and how to really improve things. We could invest 50 million in something that turns out not to be our biggest issue, and then we could be getting close to 2030 without that in place. But 2030 is the target. As far as I'm concerned, it's set in stone, granite even, I'll go as far to say. Gives us 3,451 days to get it done, so off we go then. But you know, the point is, it is there. It is a while away, but it will soon be here. And so it's important that we go ahead with a plan that sort of ensures that we deliver that within that time frame. Just moving on quickly from that as well, Where are we? Number 7. Yeah. So also, like I discussed earlier about the ideas being welcome, and that's a huge thing. I think, you know, we all know our areas better than anybody else, and I think we can all identify places where our areas can benefit from certain things. So again, those ideas and bringing those forward would be a fantastic thing. Also, where was the last thing? Oh yes, and of course, one of the most immediate changes we could take was to push on with the green electricity tariff. So that's an immediate change from us dealing with carbon emitting sources of energy and immediately go to something that we can, you know, we can control straight away and make a real positive change for Nottinghamshire, and ensuring that that power that we're using is from green sources. So that's also something that I was really excited about going and ask for you guys to approve that today. So yeah, that's it from me. But I hope that wasn't too long. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Comments, questions, Councillor Hollis, then Councillor Garland.
Thank you, Chair. And I think firstly, just to echo the comments you made with regards to Germany, but also not forgetting the horrific things in Canada. But I think just to contextualise it, I've driven from the centre of my division today. More than 50% of my division does not have running water coming through its taps because of what's going off with all the heat. And yes, there's other factors in play, but one of the factors is the fact that our towns and villages are warming up, and the reservoirs of which the water fills up in cannot cope with the sheer density of housing, and also the fact that it isn't raining as much. And these are all things that factor in. And while I certainly welcome Councillor Adams's enthusiasm, I think I'd temper it by the fact that I've been on this authority nearly a decade now, and obviously there's members around the table like Councillor Lawton and Ogle that have been on much longer. But I think that the constructive friend in me would remind them that the council has been talking about things like this for a hell of a long time. A hell of a long time did it decide to become one of the last authorities in the country to declare the climate emergency. And then the number of steps since then have been slightly maybe against our own objectives. And we can point to things in facilities, as Mr. Allen did, with regards to not using a plastic cup. But then we'll invest hundreds upon hundreds of millions of pounds in digging up fossil fuels with as the only controlling member of the pension fund that represents a lot of public sector workers in our shire and city. So there's a number of things that are slightly contradictory in my opinion. And the one thing, before I go into the rest of what I've got to say, is the ridiculous thing I've heard about these LED lights. I mean, I support LED lights being installed because they save us money. And I think even as opposition member, we have to sit here and think, well, how would we do things differently? And saving the energy bill is one thing. The lights are useless. I mean, you need 3 times as many LED lights to replace one normal light. It's a lot harsher light. I think it endangers people on footpaths. I think, you know, it's a really, really poor thing. And exactly as Councillor Adams said, it fires the light down rather than dispersing it. So you tend to have dark light on a lot of our towns and streets, and particularly footpaths, which we've certainly been approached in the independent group by, groups wanting to protect vulnerable members of our community, and they are often raised with us. I'm sure other groups have had that as well, about the vulnerability on these dark paths, which the LED lights don't help. But moving it back to this discussion, they're good for the environment, the LED lights, and save us a lot of money at the county council. So it's a balancing act. But I think it certainly does the whole process a bit of a disservice to sell them as a better light, which of course we all know isn't. But I think just to move to some of my comments now, I think obviously we moved the climate emergency on the 27th of May this year. I think whilst this made for good headlines, Chairman, residents are justifiably demanding that actions speak louder than words. I'll give you 2 examples of why this council is not serious about fighting climate change. You'll note that this Thursday is full council. The Independents submitted a motion calling for the council to recommend to Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee that we divest from companies involved in extraction of fossil fuels. This motion noted that according to the report in the Pensions Committee, 24/6/21, the estimate amount of investments by the pension fund in fossil fuels was 135 million as at the 31st of March this year. This council had the power and duty to ensure that 150,000 of active and deferred pensioners who reside in the Nottinghamshire, who are members of the local government pension scheme, not only have a pension for their retirement, but also have something worth retiring to. Yet this council is refusing to even discuss it, hiding behind legal advice that they refuse to put in writing. Something potentially for Councillor Adams to take up there. My second point is about the granting of planning permission to the £330 million waste incinerator at Radcliffe-on-Soar Power Station. This facility will send significant amounts of carbon monoxide into the air, increasing carbon emissions dramatically. This decision alone will make it impossible to meet the obligation, making it to become carbon neutral by 2030. Dressing this incinerator up as environmentally desirable option is not only wrong, but deeply disturbing. And I think it goes back to the points that Mick Allen made earlier about where do we get our energy from? You know, it's all well and good, you know, talking about the coal extraction, gas, all those fossil fuel things that our country is heavily relying on. Well, we're doing exactly the same thing. The thing we had power over, we've decided to chuck a lot of these emissions into the air. And I think we are responsible for disposing waste, but surely burning it isn't exactly the best option. And I think all these kind of points prove that this climate change emergency is happening now. I think we've always talked about it affecting our children, but it's clearly it's going to be affecting us as a generation now. And you'll excuse me for pointing out that I'm considerably younger than everybody else in the room. It's about looking after us as a demographic, but also the generations to come. And it's nice that we have the power, and it's great that we're talking about it now. But like I've said, actions need to speak louder than words. And my question is, bearing in mind the two examples I've mentioned, Mr. Chairman, do you agree that this council declaring a climate emergency was nothing more than a publicity stunt and trying to distance itself from the climate change denying opinion of the former council leader? Members will be aware that Councillor Mrs. Clutz gave quite a public statement that she doesn't believe climate change was even happening, never mind would she do anything about it. So would you say that we're distancing ourselves from this? And also, what actions are we really going to take? You know, I do intend to sit here as a constructive friend, but I want to see actions rather than words. And you can expect me to be constructive in a lot of these things. And I hope you take the comments that I've made in this as that. But you'll see that the frustration and slight hypocrisy of some of the things we do, just with those two examples, and of which we could name quite a few more. But I'll hand it back to the rest of the committee now, Chairman, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll just say one thing, just repeating a comment I made, that the motion from full council was the will and the political will. And as I said, this is now putting that will into action. So sometimes it takes a bit of time to achieve things. You can't achieve things by sort of 9 o'clock the next morning in some cases. Right, Councillor Gowland, please.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm absolutely delighted to be joining this council at this time when there is this will to do something about this. As you say, we are in a position to make a change that matters, and that's really great. I'd also like to echo the comments about people suffering so much in Germany and in Canada, and realise and recognise that it's obviously easier for us to understand their pain because we understand their way of life, but also to recognise there's lots of other people all over the world who've already suffered from climate change, and we need to act for us and for everybody and for our children. I also recognise what you say about quality of life. You know, this is a win-win situation. Nobody wants to be breathing in fumes as they go to work. Nobody wants to be worrying about, you know, plastic all over the streets. So there's only benefits here in the long term. The problem is that it requires, as you said, somewhat long-term investments for long-term gains, and that's just not the way the funding cycles work. I'd like to talk about a number of particular issues. I'd like to raise the matter of the incinerator. Contrary to appearances, I'm not just a hippie. I'm not naturally against the incinerators. I've actually followed the progress of the East Cross incinerator with considerable interest over a very long while as a joint heat and power system, but certainly local district heating system. When I first heard about the incinerator, I thought, yeah, okay. And then I've looked into it. It's a really, really bad idea, and we should not be doing this. It's going to increase CO2. It's worse for CO2 than gas. There's no justification for this incinerator. We need to get rid of the waste. If we have the incinerator there, it will encourage us to continue to burn the waste, to create the waste. Whereas if we haven't got the incinerator there, it will focus our minds on coming up with other solutions. So one of the things I think we should be looking at is how we incentivise the reduction in creation of waste. I'd also like to suggest that the council might like to look into hydrogen. I've seen this recommended a few times now for that area, for that development at Towton. Hydrogen as a way to store, a clean way, created from renewable energy, as a way to store energy and provide a relatively high energy density source. I'd also like to, I expect you know I'm a scientist, so I'm actually quite keen on technology, but I'd like to suggest that we don't put all our eggs in the basket of fusion electric cars. You know, these big high-tech systems with long-term benefits are high risk and probably have unknown consequences themselves. We need to be careful. You know, I'm not suggesting we don't develop these things, but we can't rely on them. So coming to the report, I'd like to ask, first of all, this is a question. There are a lot of points here, and I'm sure you don't want me to go through all the things I'd like to raise today. So is there a way for us to raise issues on the report, maybe by writing to you? And secondly, can we ask that maybe we consider changing the recommendation to suggest bringing back an interim report to this committee at the next meeting, and then the finalised version at a subsequent meeting? I'm not trying to push this down the road, this can down the road by any means, but just to make sure that, you know, that we have captured all inputs, potentially from residents as well, who will probably be following this matter online with interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Just in answer to your last point, I'm not sure that it's necessary to alter it, because it actually does say it agrees that a further report. So it doesn't say it's the final report. So I think if, in the spirit of ongoing work, if you can accept that it doesn't necessarily have to be the last report, you know, it can be the interim that you suggested anyway, by virtue of being further. I'll just make one comment about hydrogen. You're pushing us an open door there, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not a scientist, but I think we need to be looking into it and investigating it. And, you know, I thought privately or personally myself, maybe is hydrogen going to leapfrog electric vehicles? I don't know. It's something for us to ask ourselves the question and to investigate. So I'm certainly not making any commitment other than we need to include that within our debate and to look into all options. So, Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, if it's of any interest, I have friends who live in LA and they drive hydrogen cars and vehicles. So it's something worth looking at. And I'm amazed that not us, but the country hasn't been looking at it for a lot longer than what they have been. Perhaps they have, and we haven't seen a report. So perhaps Mick could probably have a look at that and see if there is one around. Could I turn everybody to the appendices, please? I'd like to pass comments on the appendices. Number 5, where we say designate a new tranche of local nature reserves, I've put where. On number 9, work with partners to establish nature recovery networks, where. And I think these are answers that we could sort out fairly quickly for another meeting, a future meeting that's coming before us. But there are things that I think we need answers on, because some of us are fortunate enough to live in areas and represent areas that have nature reserves and all sorts of super things. And I'd like a lot more of those things. Thank you. Then I'd like to turn us to page, the next page, number 2, and I'd like to go to flood risk management. And of course, Sue will be expecting, and Gary, for me to actually pass comment. Implement more natural flood management schemes countywide, and I've put how many. So if I could have those answers, please, Chairman, I'd be grateful.
Thank you very much indeed. I suppose my answer could be as many as are required or needed, but I'll. No, I know. I realise that's why I'm going to ask Mrs. Jakes to actually give the maybe another answer. If perhaps I could just turn to Mr. Allen first. I don't know if you're able to answer either of the 2 questions now, or whether you would prefer to come back at a later, sorry, Mrs. Gill, to come back at a later stage, number 5 and number 9, where is that something you can answer now, or
I can
would you?
certainly, Chairman, I can come back with the full list, but I would reassure members we already have local nature reserves on county council green spaces, but I can come back, Councillor Dobson, with a list to you, and indeed we can bring that forward as part of Mick's next report, or I can contact members separately.
I think that would be useful for the new members, please, in particular.
Yep, that's fine. Mrs. Jakes, I don't know, are you able to help us at all with? I'm reluctant to tie you down to a prescriptive actual number, because I think that's unfair, because I'm sure I was going to say it's fluid. I didn't mean that. I'm sure the numbers keep changing. So, but anyway, do you have any response?
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. I think for this authority, as many schemes as we can deliver where appropriate, and nationally we are way ahead of the curve with natural flood management, and we've implemented some that we've seen have made a real difference. And I'd say to members, if you have sites that you think we should be looking at, then please let us know, and we'll be out there looking at them for you.
Just come back, Chairman, on that, on Sue Jakes' comment,
Very
please.
briefly.
Oh, I will very briefly. Just to say, I wasn't asking for that. I was asking how many, and I would like an answer. And I think if we are going to move things forward, we need those answers, quite frankly. I know what good work you do, but that's not the point. I want to know how many. And we know we've had lots of flooding issues in the last 12 months. Perhaps that could top up, perhaps we have a list and we can tick the list off. That wouldn't be a bad idea. Then we'd all know where things were happening. And I think probably that's what is needed. And I think, again, that's something that new members need, Chairman.
Okay, well, I'm sure we will get information to you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Actions speak louder than words was Councillor Hollis's theme when he spoke just a moment ago. Well, we heard loads of nice words from you, Councillor Hollis, but I think it's worth reminding your voters in Ashfield that when it came to action in the previous Pensions Committee to vote on a reduction of our investment in fossil fuels, you voted against that, and we did on this side of the House. So,
point of order, Mr. Chairman, that's completely untrue and goes against a decade's worth of voting record, which Councillor Smith would do better to read. So I think what Councillor Smith is referring to, just to clarify, an independent advisor, William, advised that we removed our investment of 20% in UK holdings due to fossil fuels. If Councillor Smith will have done his research, many other local authorities are actually investing more in UK investments for the very same reason William recommended we come out. It is actually environmentally more friendly and in better investment to invest more in the UK government. And let's just remind Councillor Smith where, and you'll excuse me, this is a point of order, wants to invest our 20% unregulated Chinese investments. So you will be good to see, actually, that my voting record is far cleaner than the Conservatives. Thank you.
I think, Councillor Smith, I think there's probably quite a lot of hot air in the room already. Shall we just
Thank you. Well,
calm things down a little bit?
Moving back to the report, Mr. Chairman, it's great that Mick and Councillor Adams have highlighted what progress has already been made to date. And I said in my speech at full council when we declared a climate emergency how great those LED lights are, and there's plenty of them across Newark East that are lighting up our environment. So it's really important that they continue. Just on the action list and our priorities for achieving net zero, priority 6 is about activating net gains in biodiversity on council land, particularly around highway verges. And I wondered, there are improvements being made at the moment to bus stops across Newark East, and I wondered if we could, as part of Action 6, look at turfing the tops of bus stops, which will, of course, promote biodiversity as well as the grass verges. So that's just a point I'd like to suggest on the action plan.
I think, Councillor Smith, that's probably one of many options that can be looked at and investigated. In fact, I think it was Councillor Hollis who mentioned earlier on about balance, and it's a question of a balancing act as to how much things cost and the resources available and so on and so forth. But that, I think that comes under all the things that I mentioned about considering all options wherever possible. Councillor Ogle.
Thank you, Chairman. The council's commitment to the environment strategy has been questioned. This is the first opportunity that the administration's had in this committee to come back and respond to that motion. And we've got a detailed document here. It's not, you know, I mean, you've got to give it, the officers have done a really good job and gone into detail with the vice chair here. And then we've got the 59 points, and each of these points is not just something that you can skim over. Each point is dealing with something very substantial. So I think that the question is the council's commitment. If we continue on this course, the commitment is clear, and we hope to achieve something. I'll just mention something because I noticed the pension has been the way the pension's dealt with has been criticised, but it's, for instance, Shell and BP are actually very much into green technology, and they're into green energy delivery, and that is obviously not a majority of what they're doing. But we've got to be very careful that we don't, the pension committee have got to be very careful that they don't sell assets and impoverish those beneficiaries. So it's not straightforward. And I'd just like people to acknowledge that and do some research so that when they speak, they can respond on informed research, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chairman, for letting me to speak. First of all, I congratulate the officers on some of the work that's been done. I mean, it's a very difficult situation, and the will to improve is there. There's no doubt about it. But looking at all the situation, it's even said that the work that's being done could only contribute to 1 to 5% of the whole of the Nottinghamshire activities with the GHG emissions. It says that in the report. And perhaps what we should be doing also is all these big companies, I mean, down here is transport, 22% of the emissions comes from that area, industry 20%, buildings 17%, electricity generation and agriculture 10%, as well as, of course, transport. Perhaps the message ought to be to these people that we as a local authority are trying our best. Are you trying your best to make sure that some of the emissions are being addressed? And when you look at the whole situation, 1.5%, 1 to 5% of what we're doing is a percentage of what's happening in Nottinghamshire. When you look all over the world, China, United States of America, India, Soviet Union, they're the people, the problem, they're the problem people. Without any doubt at all, they are the problem. Our help is great, but it's insignificant, totally insignificant. And we have got to get the message over there, and all the councils together, the governments together, on these 4 areas, Soviet Union, India, United States of America, China, and say to them, this is unacceptable. Look at what's happening, the flooding, etc. There's so much happening at this present time because of their incapacity to try and help the situation. So, I really do feel that we need to not only to think about ourselves, but also others, and to try and make sure that the message is getting out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hope the COP26 escalates that message to the world, hopefully. Councillor Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think we should forget that from little acorns, very big things grow. And if we don't contribute, then, or at least our start, on it, then we'll never change. So I think we've got to show the way, and people will follow. And I think that they will realise that. Chairman, I welcome the opportunity, bringing it back so we have that opportunity to actually discuss what people have come up with to enable us then to sort of say, well, yeah, we agree with that, or there's something that we might want adding or whatever else, rather than just a policy that comes and says, here's a policy, boom, we're going to do that. And so I welcome that opportunity. One of the big things that and I know I've mentioned it in all the meetings that we've had, not prior to this committee, but also last time in this committee, and it's about planning powers. And it's the biggest thing that concerns me about what a lot of things that we do is the planning powers, and that sometimes it's fragmented because each district has a local plan, and each district local plan sometimes is different and specifies issues that are more, what they say is more to do with their issues as opposed to what we've got at, say, in a city. But clearly there are some issues that are beyond that, and I think this particular issue is one. And I don't know how we can get, because we've tried on a number of issues. I mean, the big one for me is community safety, where people say, yes, it's in, they have to take notice of it, but they don't have to implement community safety issues. They just have to say, oh, well, on this occasion, we don't think we're going to make them put CCTV in because it could be a burden, etc. I just think we need to look at that in a major way and really get our head around what the planning side can do, from the beginning. They can provide increasing green spaces around new communities instead of, for profit putting another 10 properties. They could actually, give the people that are going to live in that area a lot more space. And I think we've got to get around to that. They could also increase tree-lined avenues, but in a way, because I've got a bugbear about that, as I've said before, in a way that it's away from the highway and the general footpath, but allows you still to walk and enjoy through a particular area. Now, they can only do that at planning stage, and also integrate cycling paths. As I keep saying, how many new developments have not got cycling paths in, yet, here we are spending thousands of pounds trying to alter our roads to enable them to take cycle paths, when we've got new estates being built and they could be provided at that time without us having to do it. And you know what's going to happen? The council that is still here, which in whatever form, in 30 years, they're going to be going down those streets of those and paying loads of money to have cycle lanes put in. Probably less than 30 years. It might be within the next 10. And it's absolutely crazy. So I think, the planning side we've got to do. The other one on recycling points in areas. You go to Spain and you go to a lot of countries, and Spain in particular, where you go up and you see the recycling bins, and you look around it, absolutely spotless. You go to our recycling bins, there's bottles of glass there, there's plastic bags chucked all over. And the reason why they're spotless is because until you work it out, actually, most of the recycling bins are underground, the large facilities. So you put stuff in, but you can keep, when you go, and it goes into a big container underground where the vehicles access underground and come out. So when you look at the street scene is a red, a blue, a green bin, or a brown bin, depending on what type of recycling they do, and the mess is all gone. And you don't see it. It's recovered from underneath. Now, surely if they can do it in other places, why aren't we doing it here? Because one of the main issues and arguments that the local community will have once someone puts and it could be in a car park or wherever, where we put a recycling point, is they come back, they'll go, look at the mess. Look how they, you're supposed to be recycling, keeping the place clean, and look what happens. So for me, this is about using the plan as it's coming out. And unfortunately, a lot of districts have already gone through the local plan stage, most of them, but there's got to be some intervention somewhere where we can get that done. Because if not, all we're going to keep doing is passing lovely resolutions, doing our little bit, but the bigger picture gets lost.
Yeah, I agree with you about at planning stage. I said in another forum only last week, pretty much the same thing about designing cycle paths, etc., into wider estate roads and so on and so forth. Councillor Lawton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I won't keep members long, but really had to comment on Councillor Hollis's statement that it was a cheap, cynical ploy for us to go down the climate change strategy and our environmental strategy. Well, I can assure you, Councillor Hollis, it is not a cheap political ploy. We are not climate change deniers. We recognised that this council was going to have to improve, and that was the rationale behind the motion coming in front of full council when we were at the conference centre. I think it's extremely important for all members to understand that that is the case, and that we are also very keen as an authority, as far as the leadership is concerned, on improving and supporting the green economy and the growing of the green economy, recognising that will be under significant growth over the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, we have been debating this for an hour now, and it is going to, the recommendation is that it's going to come back. So it's an ongoing debate. So I'm going to now take it to the vote. I don't think we need to have any more speakers now because it is an ongoing thing and it'll be coming back. So all those in favour of the recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, item 5. Some more good news. Mansfield Green Recovery Flood Resilience Programme. And I'll come straight to Mrs. Jakes, who'd like to present the report, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. I've not met some of the new members, and that's probably a good thing for you, because if I had, it meant you probably got flooding in your area. So hopefully we won't meet too soon. This report provides an update for members in relation to a successful bid to Ofwat and to DEFRA for a £76 million investment into green recovery flood resilience measures for Mansfield. The investment will see a multi-agency partnership delivering this project, which will be the first in the UK for a collaborative project of this size to look at water management with this level of innovation. The bid was submitted in March. The Nottinghamshire County Council, as the lead local flood authority, worked with Severn Trent Green Recovery Project team to submit the bid. And this project has a 44-month window of delivery, so it's quite tight. Nottinghamshire County Council will be at the heart of that and will be integral to the part of the delivery team. It's an incredible level of investment. Not only will it provide sustainable opportunities to reduce flooding, but most importantly, it'll help to improve the quality of the environment for the local people of Mansfield. And lastly, I'd just like to say the outputs and the learning from this project will really help us to inform our offer across the county to lessen the impacts for those that have been seriously impacted and devastated by flooding. on several occasions in the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and it's just great news that we managed to attract that investment into Nottinghamshire. I will propose the two recommendations, top of page 7 or page 25, whichever you wish. And do I have a seconder, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, happy to formally second, and yeah, welcome the report. Fantastic to see this level of investment coming into Mansfield. I think it's one of those incredible moments where potentially this could completely turn around an area, enabling it to protect its residents, which living in an area that has suffered from occasional, in our case, surface water flooding, that can't be underestimated. I know of residents, for example, where I am, that fear even going on holiday because they're bothered about what they're going to find when they get back. So, you know, these sorts of things provide incredible, you know, they improve people's well-being because they enable them to relax more. But obviously, you know, the physical loss of property and the damage it causes to local infrastructure, you know, again, cannot be underestimated. So I think it's fantastic that we've attracted this level of investment, and to everybody that's put the work in to make it happen, I salute you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Any comments, Councillor Dobson?
Thank you, Chairman. Well done, Sue and the team, along with Severn Trent, and I'm very happy to support this 100%. It's a great pity that DEFRA couldn't have given us a bit more money. They put in a superb bid for Little Girton, but Little Girton is only small with 29 houses, so consequently gets shoved on the back burner. I have to say to you, they know what flooding's all about. Really, Mr. Adams, and I mean flooding. They go out on a boat on some occasions when it's very bad. But having said that, Sue and the team are trying desperately to assist the people up there. But I want you to know that it's great for Mansfield and it's great for the business, like it was great for Southall and great for the businesses. But the trouble is we've got smaller areas that also suffer really bad river flooding. And while we are not the lead flood authority for the rivers, that's the Environment Agency, our team here work very hard and work very hard with people like me who represent areas that are on the river. Roger Jackson would tell you exactly the same. But I'm very happy to support it, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Guilfoyle.
Yes, Chairman. Also welcome the money, and I know, you know, obviously in the works up area we're looking at what can be done there. But the issue for me is that surface water issue, which happens more frequently than the floods, thank goodness. A lot more frequently, the flash flooding the other week. Again, 2 areas in my patch, the bridge down on Kilton Road was full again, and so was the bridge as it passes through down on Rayton Spur, again flooded again. But it just seems that nothing's been done, and I know that's not our particular impact, but I don't know if there's any weight that you can put to resolve that in any way, shape or form, because it's an annual and not just annually now. It's coming every time there's a flat, you know, heavy rainfall. Those areas are flooding now. It's just beyond ridiculous. And all right, yeah, a lot of people, it's vehicles getting stuck in it, and people who ought to know better than to try and drive through, you know, a foot of water, but still try it because I think it's still try it and end up being stranded. But it's other people, you know, I mean, it's one of them's on an ambulance route anyway. It's the main route to Bassetlaw Hospital. And that causes them significant problems. So again, I would hope that some attention could be dealt with that. Welcome this money. Hope that we can get as much for works up area, or I suppose we'll have to elect Ben to be in our area so that money will flow with it.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Lawton, please.
Would you like me to have a word with Ben, Glyn?
In your own time.
Well done, Sue. This is one of a series of good news, a series of good news stories that have come through from central government. You never miss a trick, do you? Me and Sue work very closely together over Southwell, so I'm sure that the people of Mansfield will benefit greatly from all the work that you're about to do on their behalf.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor, you just in time, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm quite happy with Mansfield getting this flood resilience money, and you know it's good that the whole county is going to get something in the end, because they do realise that Nottinghamshire has got serious flooding problems in all sorts of areas. Can I say, in paragraph 3 of the report, it states that as the lead local authority, flood authority, we have experience of developing and delivering this type of scheme on a smaller scale in other areas across the county, which are vulnerable and at risk of flooding in places like Hucknall. Now, can I just say I'm grateful for the flood prevention scheme that has been completed in Ditchfield Park, which you went and had a look at. Nice to see you in Hucknall. And,
I did indeed. Very nice it was too.
And it's a great place for people. It really is. Yeah, and it was, of course, it was designed by Ashfield District Council, which is again a nice policy. Two of us working together on the scheme, which we should be doing all the time. You know, more and more. Can I say, despite significant investment, we still have serious issues on Thoresby Dale in Hucknall. The £430,000 flood prevention scheme was described by the local residents, not me. I'm just I represent my people, and I tell you what they say. You know, and that's the issue. And they're saying it was not fit for purpose. After this, the county council completed the scheme, and residents now have dubbed it Thoresby Lake. But the council promised some time ago to put things right, but nothing has happened. There was certainly no work has happened, and of course you know that that I was out there. Paddling in the floods after the scheme had finished, and it was very, what should we say, disturbing that had happened after so much money had been spent by this authority at that time. Finally, one of the biggest causes of flooding is the state of our gullies, and as you know,
Councillor Wilmot, can I just say we're going rather off the. This is about the Mansfield Green Recovery Flood Resilience Programme. If I could cite lots of examples in my division of flooding and gullies and God knows what. This is about the Mansfield Resilience Programme.
All I can say is well done to the council for getting the money, and I just hope that they put more, consider more areas and put more money into the areas. Get in touch with Severn Trent Authority and tell them that I mean Hucknall's got about 150 brooks underneath the area. Yeah. Yes, but that's what I'm trying to say. But there's so many problems that need to be investigated.
Yeah, well, this is about Mansfield. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'm glad that's just happened, because I think if you seem. I mean, I've just sent you an email. Let me start again. I've just sent you an email. I'll say copy Councillor Garland in. You must understand you are here as the chairman of the committee, not as
and as chairman of the committee, I am chairing the committee, and it's the chairman's discretion how the committee is chaired.
Chairman, with the greatest respect, if you could let me finish, you'd probably understand what I'm about to say. Councillor Garland sits here not only representing herself, but the Labour group as the lead spokesman. I sit here not only representing myself, but as the independent lead spokesman, which represents more than 1 in 7 members of our community. So, as you sit here as lead spokesman, I will gladly listen to what you've got to say. But in the first meeting, you shot me down when I was talking on point, and I thank you for not over talking me again. In the second meeting, with which of our review panel, You demanded that I turn my camera on when there was no rules or regulations whatsoever to say otherwise.
Can I
And
just...
then, Mr. Chairman,
no,
Mr. Chairman,
Councillor
Mr.
Hollis.
Chairman,
No, Councillor Hollis. I'm the chairman. I'm speaking. What relevance has this got to do with the Mansfield Green Recovery Flood Resilience
If
Programme?
you give me time, I would move to it. And in the third instance...
No, I don't want you to move to it. What points do you have to make on the item on the agenda?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm democratically elected to sit here as the minority spokesman, and I will be heard. And the third thing is, our very able member, Councillor Wilmot, was speaking to the last topic, and you shut him down. Councillor Wilmot was highlighting that this very resilience project happened in Thoresby Dale, in Hucknall, and didn't work. And what Councillor Wilmot was trying to point out, of what I heard in that, and I have a copy of his speech here, and I'd gladly send it to you, was what assurance does residents in Mansfield have that the same thing won't happen that happened at Thoresby Dale to these residents? So to shut him down, claiming he wasn't on topic, was completely incorrect, and that's why I bring it up as part of this item. But the next point I will make is extremely relevant to this and carries on from what Councillor Wilmot was saying, is this council has spent considerable money alleviating flooding in other parts of the county, Thoresby Dale, as Councillor Wilmot said. Do we have some assurance, and have we learned lessons, that this will work this time? And then I suppose the bit I will crowbar in cheekily is the fact that there is other parts across our county, including in Ashfield, that frankly need an urgent review. Common Road, Mill Lane, to name but a few. Ironically, we have the opposite problem today in the fact that they don't have any water, not to drink. But of course, we know that these kind of things unfortunately run hand in glove, and the next day it will flood. So yeah, fully support this, and I think it's great news for the people of Mansfield. But from looking at it from an authority perspective, I'd like to know that we're getting value for money, and is there other areas that are going to be lucky enough to have this same sort of review, especially Ashfield? Thank you.
Mr. Wood, do you have any response?
Thanks, Councillor Wilmot and Councillor Hollis, for your question about Thoresby Dale. I'd be quite happy to provide you a briefing note on Thoresby Dale. What happened on the scheme was there was a blockage, and the flooding that was caused there, which was very unfortunate, was a blockage which we've now removed. We also adjusted some wear levels on there as well to even make it even further resilient to that happening again. So as far as I'm concerned, that scheme now is fully functioning and fully operational, and we've put in measures as well to stop the blockages happening in the future. So we're happy to drop you a note to that effect. But and again, I think your point is a valid one about always learning from schemes, and so we'll take that knowledge and that learning forward into future schemes.
Thank you. Right, so now move to the vote. It's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. Right, item 6, the joint waste local plan update, and I go straight to Mrs. Gill. I think your microphone's not switched on. That's it.
Yes, it is. Press the button.
Oh, sorry, excuse me 1 second. Councillor Wilmot, your microphone's switched on. So if you could just... Thank you.
Is that better? Can councillors hear me now?
That's it.
Yes, thank you. The purpose of this paper, the short paper, is to introduce you to the waste local plan. This is a joint local plan that the County Council prepares with the City Council, and the stage we're currently at, we have produced an issues and options which went out to consultation in 2020, and obviously we had just gone out to consultation, and then unfortunately COVID hit, so we extended our period of consultation, and then the County Council focused its attention on the minerals local plan. So we are now, along with our colleagues at the City Council, picking up the waste local plan again. And the intention is to bring a report to yourselves with a draft document in the autumn. But we thought it would be useful for you to be aware of this piece of work. As well as the issues and options consultation, we have carried out a waste needs assessment, which will inform the thinking of the plan. So this plan is at an early stage, and the support of members of this committee and members sitting on a smaller working group with the city will be very important in taking this plan forward. And I've brought my colleague Steve Pointer, who's the team manager for the planning policy team, with us this afternoon, and Steve will be able to answer any detailed questions. But I would suggest, given that we haven't got the document in front of you yet, because it's still being worked on, it's perhaps best to save a wider discussion on waste issues and waste planning issues for the autumn when we have a document in front of you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll propose the recommendations on page 3 of the report, and in the second recommendation, I would propose that the chairman and vice chairman, in brackets environment, serve on that councillor working group. Seconder, please, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chairman. Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Gowland.
Thank you. I wonder why the report doesn't mention incineration. So there's targets and figures on all the other sorts, well, many of the other sorts of waste disposal. It'd be good to see incineration included, given the discussions about the incinerator. I'd like to note that the need to just get rid of waste is getting much more important, given that China and India are taking their environmental situations very seriously and are stopping us disposing of waste there. But can we include incineration in the figures, please?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. I think just to I have a number of broad comments to make, but one particular one firstly relating to point 3 on the recommendations. Sally will note that in July 2010, the Sutton Household Recycling Centre off Sutton Road in Huthwaite was closed for good. Since then, complaints about fly tipping have risen dramatically. A lack of recycling centre in Sutton in Ashfield is one of the biggest issues raised with me. Under the last administration, a feasibility study was carried out to investigate reopening it. It was decided that it couldn't, as the nearby landfill site had been sold. The council did accept, however, the need for a recycling centre in Sutton, actually identifying £2 million to fund it. Just before the elections in May, it was leaked to the local media that no progress had been made on this. I don't know if Sally or you, Chairman, would like to confirm whether this is the case or not, and whether Sutton Ashfield will be getting its promised new recycling centre and will fit this as part of the plans. Interestingly, 3 sites were identified, one in Huthwaite, one in Stanton Hill and one in Mansfield, to alleviate the overcapacity in waste collection in the in the West Mansfield, North Ashfield part of the Nottinghamshire. And then the second thing was kind of picking up on Councillor Garland's comments with regards to waste. Are we going to be negotiating, I don't know if this fits part of this plan, but extra capacity to collect things like food waste as part of the contract with Veolia? I know they seem quite stubborn about various things like that, but seemingly that is an environmentally friendly way of getting some of this stuff firstly out of the incinerator and into a more recycled way of doing things. But they're my end of my comments, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you on that last point. That's something that I'm already underway in looking at our waste disposal policy, particularly in relation to recycling. So what you've just mentioned is already on my radar, let's put it that way. So,
if I could, Chair, Ashfield's trying to do it, and we're more than willing to obviously even supply residents with the bins, etc. If there's a conversation we can have after this where we could even use Ashfield as a pilot district, I'd be happily look into it, because we're very keen to do it. And if you're happy to do that, the offer's there.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Lawton.
Yes, thank you very much, Sally. Just a comment really. Just make sure, as part and parcel of the local of the waste local plan, that you tighten up on the local aggregate assessment part of the plan with the use of construction materials, so that we've got an accurate a reasonably accurate figure, so that when we come to do the local advocates assessments, we are more accurate in our ability to be able to understand what the requirements of the industry are. It's just really a point. It was very much out of date, the figure that we were using during the local minerals plan. And if you're doing a new plan, you may as well tighten up those criteria.
Mrs. Gill, do you have any responses?
I can talk all day and all night about the waste planning process and the preparation of the waste local plan, but I'm unable to comment at all on any household waste recycling centres, Councillor Hollis. And in response to Councillor Gowland's comments, the paper with the bullets at paragraph 6 is just some comments from the waste needs assessment. The plan as a whole will be looking at what happens to our waste, what sites do we need, what sort of sites, etc. So all those issues will be considered, and obviously when members see the draft document, and indeed in advance of that, if members want to drop myself or Steve a line with anything that they might wish to bring to our attention, please do, but it'll be in the plan, but I can only comment on the planning issues.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, Mr. Allen, did you have anything you wanted to clarify?
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's probably just worth flagging that there are two different issues here. Sally's reporting on the joint waste local plan, which is a statutory planning document, and isn't anything to do with my role in running the Waste Disposal Authority for Nottinghamshire, which is the stuff for the curbside collections and disposal through Veolia and other contracts. So I think there is always a separation there. What I would say is I could certainly answer the one around food waste very simply. There's a group already established, being chaired by Bassetlaw District Council, and Alistair Blunkett from Ashfield was part of that group, is part of that group as far as I'm aware. And there'll be further discussions around that at Joint Waste Management Committee on Wednesday, which I think Councillor Adams and maybe Councillor Clark as well are due to attend alongside Derek and myself. But that work around planning for separate curbside food waste collections is ongoing and involving Veolia, on the basis of it will be statutory under the Environment Bill when it's brought into law in 2023. Timescale still to be confirmed. On the recycling centre, I'm unaware of any capital allocation anywhere for a new recycling centre to serve Ashfield. There have been discussions around wider need, obviously related to the closure at Sutton, but particularly housing growth across Ashfield and Mansfield, and around the potential needs for stuff in and around that area. But it hasn't gone any further than initial discussion. I'm certainly not aware of 3 sites being identified, so I'm not quite sure where that information has come from, but it doesn't flow into my world. The only site where we've actively been pursuing is obviously the one in the south of the county.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Any other? No. So it has been moved and seconded with the number 2 with the chairman and vice chairman. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Right, item 7, the future casual reduction targets for 2030. I think Mr. Wood. Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. So this paper sets out the proposed targets for the next 10 years on preventable road traffic accidents and casualties, and it builds on the work over the last 20 years, as you'll see from the report. Road casualty reduction obviously is a significant issue for the County Council and is a priority, and we're a key member of the Nottinghamshire Road Safety Partnership, and we're joined today by Suzanne Hayden, who's worked on this for I won't say many years, but many years. Thanks, Suzanne. Both inside Nottinghamshire and inside VIA, and leads on that work. So Suzanne's with us today to answer any questions alongside me. And the recommendations are at paragraph 21 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And also it's very welcoming that the previous target had been superseded as well. So we need to give congratulations to that. I will propose the 2 recommendations on page 4. Seconder, Councillor Ogle.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, Chairman. I'll just say a few words on it now, if I may. Thank you, Mr. Wood, for bringing this, and Mrs. Hayden for being involved with it. Safety was a priority of the previous administrations. Hence, Notts County Council has made a significant contribution by speed monitoring and control, safety outside schools, the photographic vehicles, which we've increased the number of. We can all welcome the success and its effect on this casualty reduction. And we need to continue working with the partners with NCC policies that have a contribution to the success of the partners in meeting these targets. We've exceeded the targets and we need to continue to exceed the target in the future. And the reasons for the recommendation, I'll just do a sentence. The proposed casualty reduction target and strategy will protect the public and save lives. So by doing that, we should be able to further reduce and continue reducing the casualties within the target. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Any questions? Councillor Guilfoyle and Councillor Wilmot.
Yes, Chairman. I mean, this reduction is not done, entirely by the County Council. It is a partnership issue, and anybody knows who has issues around highways and problems, in particular with speeding traffic. Members of the public come to us to solve that. Sometimes we can by measures, but other times it's other partners that we rely on to do it. Hence speeding drivers, a lot of the is the police and enforcement from them. But there is a lot of significant partnership work done to deliver significant reductions like this. But one of the things I have always had a beam bonnet about, and it is the partnership. And I believe that the partnership should produce an annual report, and I can't remember seeing the last one. I also believe there should be some accounts as well, because money goes in and they spend it. And my view has always been that it's mainly an officer group that sits around the partnership, and probably quite rightly so, because they're professional practitioners who get the report. But I was sure that we should have an annual report, and we should have at least the accounts and where the money's being expended, because from that there are learning points. Clearly, some issues that occur across the county reoccur across the county. So there could be an accident black spot, and actually it could be repeated. So it's good to know what's happened, what's been done, because we can pass. Our officers are passing that good practice on, but as a member, I may have issues that's been resolved in one area, but I'm unaware what's been put into place. So I'm just, again, I think that partnership can also pass on good practice to us as members, but also understand some of the constraints that are about, because the public quite rightly want things to change today, but we all know that when it comes down to being a monetary issue, that it's usually some years on before those particular changes can happen. But really, my big request is, can we have a bit more openness and transparency regarding the road safety partnership, and have a report and have the finance, etc., come to committee.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much, Chair. While this is really all laudable, and I fully support the reduction target and so forth, and the whole paper's quite good, and the premise of the targets I agree with it, but I fail to understand this council's current reactive attitude to road safety, and I say that because I've been involved in so many incidents just recently. How many times has members been told that the council will not consider road safety measures because there's not enough accidents, deaths, or near misses? And of course, who gets it in the neck? The councillor. council gets it in the neck because the reaction to what they feel is serious it doesn't seem to be taken as quite as serious by officers. But the problem is, of course, you have orders to follow, and if there isn't an accident, if there isn't a death, then I understand that the whole situation on that what happens. And as I say, this is despite warnings from the public and members alike. There just doesn't seem to be any organisation or situations that happen, you know, because we've got to get ahead of the situation. Wouldn't it be fantastic if we got no deaths at all because of the work that we've done beforehand just to get hold of the problem in schools, in all different organisations and so forth, all could help in this way. And of course, families, some of the problem families we've got who don't seem to take this sort of situation as necessarily as strongly as we do. But all I can say is that it's only because of my intervention that roads like Annesley Road, Limby Road, Waterloo Road, Papawick Lane are now being considered. I've just had a report on these roads, and fantastic. Yes, you are doing something, going to do something about it because it's tested, and the speed of the vehicles is not horrendous, but it's not acceptable to the council. And so I want you to reach 0 casualties. It'd be fantastic. But all I'm saying is, if anybody reports anything, please take it seriously, whether it's the general public or a member, because we do have to look at these things more seriously. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, I'm quite confident that officers and members and everybody takes road safety extremely seriously. I think that goes hopefully without saying. I don't know, Mr. Wood, do you have any particular response?
If I could take both questions and then just ask Suzanne Haven if she might add to the answers, if that, with your permission, Chair. So, in terms of an annual report with committee's permission, there would be no reason why we wouldn't bring an annual report. Obviously, we already bring quarterly information on the actual statistics, but we can bring a more fulsome report. There's no problem with that. And then in terms of the question from yourself, Councillor Wilmot, I think I can just reiterate that everybody takes those requests very seriously, and there's a mixture of measures, you know, between education, enforcement, and engineering, and there's a mixture of general approaches on speed limits, such as the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits outside schools, but then more targeted measures where it's accidental. Suzanne leads on this. I'll ask Suzanne if she wants to respond as well.
Thank you. Just to pick up on your point, Councillor Guilfoyle, obviously the partners in the strategic partnership we do around the five safe systems approach. We have all agreed in principle last week that we will work together to ensure that that happens. So perhaps if this is approved, we could come and base the report around those.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you. Yeah, just really to pick up on some of the points that have been made, and I think Councillor Guilfoyle accurately kind of expressed what the problems are and the benefits. You know, this is a partnership of of course, we are only one cog of, an important cog, should I say. But I think, as Councillor Wilmot made clear, often I think we could definitely be accused of being reactionary to some of these issues, particularly with things like the installation of zebra crossings and other things that, of course, make not only pedestrians' lives safer, but also road traffic users. And interestingly, one of the reasons I actually became a member of this authority was back in 2013 when I was first elected, but 2011 before that. A friend of my grandma's, a lady called Hilda, had been a big campaigner to get a zebra crossing installed on Sutton Road, Huthwaite, that took her to the medical centre and Briley Park. She collected a petition, the council refused it. She was subsequently killed in the same spot. Only a month or two after did the county council agree to install the zebra crossing in that quite dangerous spot. To me, that seemed quite ridiculous, because I appreciate that, you know, to predict the answer from highways, you know, we do have to look at stats and raw numbers of these things where accidents have been. But I think public knowledge, and particularly knowledge from local elected members, should also be included in that and genuinely looked at. And any member that's been a member for a long time will have seen that VIA now have these stock answer emails. And one of the stock emails that we get sent is there isn't enough stats on said issue or whatever, and all they do is fill the numbers in for that particular road and write the street name in. I'd like to move away from some of that and actually have a bit more of a flexible approach about where we look at road safety improvements. Well, it's not this, Councillor Lawton, you know, I respect you very much, but I don't talk over you when you're speaking, and it isn't disgraceful. It's actually being pragmatic, because my grandma's friend Hilda would not have been killed if people have listened to her and involved that local knowledge and given it some weighting, not just looking at the stats. And I also think there's far more we can do, because we can look beside these stats, and of course there's other factors at play. You know, safety in cars has massively improved over this time scale, and of course that's lowered the number of fatalities. But that's not to say we aren't doing things, and I am impressed to see, you know, zebra crossings installed on places like Alfreton Road, Sutton, lighting improved, etc. But one partner I would like to get more out of is the police. I think they do a remarkably interesting job, I think, to put it politely, with not only notifying road users where their speed cameras are going to be, but also not coming out enough. You know, they'll do Mrs. Smith for going 33 and a 30, but someone who's going 60 repeatedly in the said 30 zone, they're not there. And it goes down to the fact that we don't get the numbers, get the money, sorry, for the yellow boxes. You know, the reason we don't install yellow boxes anymore is the county council doesn't get the money. You know, and I'd like to see a better way of doing things, that if we are going to invest in, say, yellow speed boxes, why aren't we seeing the return exactly in the same way the police, when they find people, they get the return as well, although of course it's in relationship with the AA now. So I think there's certainly things we can do to improve these, and one thing we've found, like for example in Ashfield, is one of the ways we've stopped fly tipping is by fining people for dropping litter and fag ends, for example. You know, you walk around Sutton Town Centre, Hucknall Town Centre, Kirkby Town Centre, and you will notice how clean the streets are with no fag ends and whatever. We find 700 people just in a few months with that. And it's relevant to this. The way we get people to slow down is by hitting them in the pockets. The County Council's done a fantastic job at installing more average speed checks. I think they work great. Why can't we have more? And I think we also should be pushing the police that when we have designated these areas and when we've put the interactive speed signs up, which then allows them to park their mobile speed vans in the same location, because of course all the legal signage is up, why aren't they there more? That's the question I'd ask. And I think the final point is working with other partners like the Fire Authority. You know, members will note that only a couple of years ago the Fire Authority closed down Ashfield Fire Station at night, and I think the fire stations are quite misnomer, because most of the stuff they do is road traffic incidents. I'm lucky enough to be on the Fire Authority now, and one of the things we push for is to see more hours at Ashfield Station. But in the evening hours, there is no full-time cover at Ashfield Station. Of course, that covers everything from junction 27 to 29 of the motorway, including Sutton Kirkby, west of Mansfield, as well as the closest station. I think we should be putting more pressure on them to say, well, what can we do better? And they aren't the worst player, they do a fantastic job, but we want to make sure we get everybody around the table. Us not being reactionary, the police being more present with their police vans, speed cameras, and things like the Fire Authority being a bit better coverage with some of their operatives. So they're the kind of three things that I'd contribute to this. But overall, it's fair to say these are positive stats, but let's not look away from the fact that there is more to be done. And that's the comments there. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we all regret deaths and injuries on the roads, however they occur. Why don't we do more? It's back to that word balance again, and we have got to look at resources. I mean, if we had limitless resources, then could have a speed camera on every road and a zebra crossing and whatever everywhere. So unfortunately, it's trying to prioritise them and get the order going so that we can do as best we can within the resources that we've got available. Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, Councillor Wilmot's absolutely right. The public have a perception, because sometimes it is a perception, of 90 miles an hour going straight down the road. I exaggerate, and therefore it's dangerous. They also don't like the stock answer is there's been no deaths, so you can't have anything done. And I really do think at some stage the partnership needs to be looking at what sort of answers we as elected members can give the residents, because that is not a really good answer anymore. And because in the main, the public are not stupid. They can see what's happening, but they take great offence to, oh, somebody's got to get killed before something gets done. And that really doesn't do Via any good, the county any good, the fire service, the police, everybody. So when you go to your meetings, Chairman, can you bring that up, please, and have a debate within your partnership group as to how we can answer the public, because I really do think we need to think about that seriously. Also, I think the average speed cameras are terrific. The trouble is, as Tom Hollis says, there's not enough of them. Now, I do know that they're quite expensive, extremely expensive. But again, why are they extremely expensive? What is it that causes the expense? Is it the monitoring, or is it the actual producing and putting them up? I don't think it is. I think it's the monitoring. I think that it's the people on the ground or in the cupboards where they look at these things. But seriously, that I think we should look at, and that should be looked at on all roads that are what I would call pretty straight. And when I say pretty straight, it doesn't matter where they are. It doesn't matter whether it's in the middle of Newark. Well, there isn't any straight roads really in the middle of Newark, only London Road. But seriously, you know what I mean. Where there's a long straight road, I do think these average speed cameras need to be looked at, because it's amazing when you'll be suddenly hit one, like you come off the A46 and you're going to Loudham, and they have average speed cameras all the way down to the Oxton roundabout. It's wonderful because everybody slows down, because they've obviously all had a letter and they've all been given a nasty fine. So I do think that's something that perhaps, again, I don't know whether it comes and it will come under that particular partnership. I think the Deputy Chief Executive is nodding his head in agreement, so it must be. So could you please take that on board as well, Chairman? You and the Vice Chairman, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to bring you up to date, Councillor Dobson, it's all the way to the Ollerton roundabout, not yeah. All right. Okay. Councillor Gowland, please.
Thanks very much. I'd like to echo what lots of people said. You know, I think it would be good if the staff could be freed to use their experience and common sense rather than having to rely on the stats. I understand that there are limitations based on the budget, but it is really grating when you can see something that's completely silly and it just says, oh, well, no one's died. I think sort of taking further the idea of average speed cameras, the right thing to do really is to look at the way the roads are designed. So you talked earlier about planning, and I think we need to look at this in all the plans on how the roads are designed, because long straight roads encourage speeding. You know, anybody who drives knows that. It's very hard sometimes to slow down on those fast roads. So rather than, or as well as having the average speed cameras, perhaps we could look at the road design. I'm thinking of the Radcliffe Road. Two ends of the Radcliffe Road are, you know, multi-lane highways, and the middle section is a little narrow road that twists along through tree-lined houses. Everybody slows down for that area. The whole thing's 40 miles an hour. At the two ends, people are going at 60. So design the roads right, and this isn't a problem. And finally, well, it's a less of a problem. Finally, I'd just like to mention there's a bit of an emphasis on road safety education in schools, and clearly that's essential, and bikeability is essential, but it mustn't be at the expense of discouraging children to go out on the road. So we mustn't be putting all the emphasis on the children's education and not on the driver's education. That should be a top up, not the primary way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Actually, on Friday, I was at a couple of schools on the bikeability scheme, and I saw for myself the trainers were actually taking the children out onto the road and across busy traffic lights. So, you know, but I agree. Also, we need to educate the drivers to be aware of those children as well. So, yes, it works both ways. Yeah. Councillor Lawton.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased, actually. I'm substituting today. We've just had a speed reduction scheme put in at Little Carlton in South Muscombe, and it's just come on force today. I mean, it was based on the safety of that particular road, and so there's I can see why your stats are improving all the time, Suzanne, because you listen to that community. I mean, here you go. I received this text at 11:25. It says, "Hi, Bruce. We would like to thank whoever this may concern. Was it Christian at County who helped along with you to get a 40-mile-an-hour scene? But in the village, we would like to send a thank you via email, please. The residents are so pleased." You know, that is the nature of the work that you've been doing over many years, and for that, I applaud you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. The 45% reduction is great, but as we've all said, we must do more, which includes targeting those areas that don't quite meet the statistics. And I totally agree with Councillor Dobson, and I think I didn't mention it in the Highways Committee publicly, but I did speak to Mr. Smith during the break and asked that as part of the highway review, we look at those template responses that go out, because quite frankly, they're not good enough. We all receive them, so do our residents, and it just says, no, it doesn't meet the criteria, or there hasn't been enough deaths or whatever. And there's obviously some reasons behind that need explaining better to our residents, because we get copied into those responses from VIA, and then the resident just shouts at us, and we have to do the explaining. So I've spoken to Mr. Smith about that, and let's get that in the review. But a positive in my area of Newark East, I'd like to thank the team there, that there is a road called Beacon Hill Road that goes from a 40 to a 30 and then back up again, and you just get people going through there at all one speed. Now, that doesn't meet the criteria, but through the works your team have done, listening to me, my predecessor, and the residents on that road, you're expanding the 30-mile-an-hour limit, which is great. So I just want to thank you for that, which will make Newark East safer without having to hit those silly targets. So, well, Councillor Dobson, you can have the glory as well. So thank you.
Great. OK, thank you very much indeed. That's all the speakers we have. So we have the recommendations which have been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Item 8 is the work programme, which you have before us. Mr. Smith, any updates or?
As ever, Chairman, we'll consider any other items members want to raise. And of course, with the summer break, we'll do what we can to meet the September dates now that they've been put in the calendar. But we'll work that through.
Good. And it's a living document. So if everybody has any things to, sorry, Councillor, well, I'll just propose it first. Propose that we agree the work programme. Seconder.
I'll second it, Chairman, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Guilfoyle.
Just the report from the Community Safety, the partnership, Chairman.
Okay. Right. Is that what you were going to say?
It was, but I actually wanted to bring up a point I made earlier on. The comments on the appendix to that document. I don't know if it's the right moment. What do we do about that? We just write directly to you. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not sure. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it might Yeah, okay. Rightio, everybody. So, sorry, we will accept that work programme as it is. All in favour? Yeah. Okay, great, lovely. Okay, with that, thank you very much indeed, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.